tonight I'm going to do my part 2 of my Scouts Canada National Fundraiser presentation, focusing on Apple Day. Now, we'll do a disclaimer though in the beginning. This is not going to be as comprehensive as the trees presentation was. That really kind of covered the whole gamut from beginning to the end, with not a lot left out. Apple Day, collecting Apple Day badges is not quite as simple. There's a lot more to it, and as you get down it, there's a lot of branches that you can take. So I'm just going to basically give you an idea of, number one, what is Apple Day, and then kind of introduce you to some of the badges, and you can see how many different streams there are to it. But before we really get into Apple Day, I did have one follow-up from last week's presentation. So on the Trees for Canada, I found a really cool item after the presentation that somebody found, and I'm happy that they're going to trade it to me. They're coming to our traderie here in September. They're going to bring this up to. So this is actually a packet of sugar. So I love adding little oddities and little strange items to my collection, besides badges. So looking at this packet of sugar, a couple things that I was able to determine by looking at the logo, the fact that it's that round style, because we knew that it evolved over time. So I knew right away it was probably from the 90s or the late 80s. But then I noticed on the back it says 40 million trees planted. And looking back at the presentation, we know that 1987 was when we celebrated 10 million, and we knew 1995 is when we hit 50 million. So this is probably from around 1993 is my best guess based on all that information. So pretty excited. The other really cool thing about this packet of sugar is that it's from Atlantic Sugar Company, and Atlantic Sugar had a sugar refinery in my hometown in St. John, New Brunswick, down at the port. So it makes it even more special for me to be able to add this to my collection. So moving on to Apple Day. So what is Apple Day? Well, it's an annual event. Now, I'm calling this Scouts Canada National Fundraisers. However, a little caveat, I have learned that not every place in Canada celebrates Apple Day or participates in it. I heard that this is not a thing in Alberta, but majority of Canada does do Apple Day. So for all intents and purposes, I'm still calling it a national program. It's an annual event, and it provides our scouting youth for an opportunity to show their appreciation to the general public throughout their scouting year. And they do that by distributing apples to the community. And as a result, donations are accepted in exchange. But to be clear, the Scouts are not selling apples. There's no price per apple. We just give away apples, and people thank us for the apple, and they give us a little monetary donation. And the way that it generally works, it usually happens either in September or October. It may vary based on where in the country you are, but groups are giving designated areas to canvass in their neighborhood. It usually will take place in front of grocery stores or arenas or other public areas that have high traffic. And obviously you have to set up range to canvass at that location on the days. So each group has their areas that they cover, and a little bit of history. Now, these are just a couple posters to look at while I tell you a little bit about the history. So Apple Day began in 1932. So it goes back quite a ways. And I'm proud to say that the very first Apple Day was held in my hometown of St. John, New Brunswick. It was led by Scouter Eli Boyaner, and they handed out 21,000 apples that first event as a way to say thank you to the community for all their support. And as a result, lo and behold, they received donations to scouting in return for the apples. Now, I also learned that by speaking with another scouter that they have the first recorded Apple Day in St. Catharines, Ontario, was held 2 years later in 1934. They handed out 70 bushels of apples that first year, and they have a record of raising $374. So for 1934, that was a pretty good sum of money. In 1936, they raised $653. And then in 1937, they raised almost $900. And they used portions of that money was saved, and it was eventually used as a down payment to buy Camp Wetaskiwin in 1945. And that is a scout camp property in St. Catharines, Ontario, not too far from Niagara Falls. And it's still in use today. It's still in operation. These are just some tags. Some of them are fairly old, and the ones on the bottom are sort of the more modern style. But so typically, we give the person an apple. If they give us a monetary donation, they usually get a little tag, and it's kind of like a receipt. And usually they'll clip it to their jacket or to their button pocket. So when they go to the next store and they see that next group of scouts, they'll see the tag and then, okay, they've already donated to Apple Day. I won't pester them. So these are what the National Apple apple day badges look like. And I'm not going to show you every single badge of every single year because they all look the same. So these are just a couple to show you. They basically just change up the color scheme from year to year. And here's a few more. And then we have some woven. So in recent years, they've gone from the embroidered to the woven badge, but it's still the same design. So where we start to diverge from these national badges is there are some parts of the country that have their own Apple Day badges. Some of them have run for many years, some longer than the national badge, some ran for short periods of time, but there's a lot of different Apple Day badges out there. And with the national ones, there are a few years that have multiple colors combinations for the same year. I don't know why. I don't know if they didn't make enough in the first run and they had to get some more made and they decided to make it different. I don't really know why they have, but they're very common knowledge that there's a lot out there of the different colors for just a few select years. This is the only national badge that really differs from the main design. In 1997, it's a lot larger, about twice the size of the regular Apple Day badges, and it's got the 90-year of Scouting logo that Scouts Canada used that year. Now, these are some of the Halifax area Apple Day badges. Now, growing up in as a kid, I mean, this is way before the internet was a really big thing. So, we didn't have as much access to information. So we didn't know as a kid that other parts of the country weren't using the same badges as us. Halifax, not too far away in Nova Scotia, that was the first that I came to understand that they had their own Apple Day badges. And they started back in 1976. Doesn't have any year on it, but then they started adding some years. And then they went to that round design from the early 80s up until 2012. So a really long stretch using that round design. And then they went back to the apples again. And then they had a few years where they did something special in 1997, like that national one. They used that special logo. And then in 2010, they had a special one and then went back to that Apple Day design, that Apple logo again. Now, right across the river from Halifax is Dartmouth. And I don't think they didn't have these for nearly as many years, but there are Dartmouth badges as well. I guess they had to compete with Halifax and do something special. The next set of Apple Day badges I came to learn about were these ones. And at first I was kind of confused because they don't say where they're from. So it took me a while to figure out that these actually come from British Columbia out on the West Coast. And, they did these badges for quite a few years. And again, there's a few years where they also have multiple colors, like a couple of the national ones. Then I came across these badges, which are from Ontario. These are from Hamilton, Wentworth area. And then London did them for at least a dozen years or so. And these ones are for some reason I found a little bit harder to get when I decided to start collecting them versus the other ones. And then there's a whole myriad of different various designs from different parts of the country. Some of them we've been able to identify and understand where they came from. Others are still a bit of a mystery. The one on the top that kind of looks like the national badge, but it has NWO. That's for Northwestern Ontario. They did their version for a few years. That Windsor one's actually, I believe, like a vinyl material. It's not fabric. This one here from 1947 felt, and that's the oldest one that I've been able to find a picture of. I don't actually own that one, but somebody shared the picture for me in preparation for this presentation. These Apple Day, I helped at Apple Week badges. These are kind of, I don't know why, but I always really like these. I don't know too much about them. I believe they came from the Toronto area because at least anyone that I've ever collected or found have come from that area, but I don't know specifically who released them or when, but they have a few different shapes and designs for the Apple Week. So as you can see, Apple Day is a little bit more complicated than trees because there's a lot of different Apple Day badges. Some groups may have even just done their own group Apple Day badge. I've seen some of those rather than just for an area. So that's the end of the presentation. Anybody have any questions?
Yes. So apples are the most widely grown fruits in Canada. What's the second most widely grown fruit? Are they peaches?
I wouldn't think so. For fruit, we
Grapes.
definitely have lots of apple orchards for sure.
Grapes.
Yeah.
We have massive wineries right across the country now, all through Niagara region, all through Prince Edward County, into the Maritimes, British Columbia, Penticton. So grapes are probably a huge, huge agricultural crop. The other ones people don't realize is blueberries.
The reason I mention it is because I have this postcard from the 55 World Jamboree,
Peaches.
where the peach industry made up a special, very rare postcard.
Yeah. Most of those peach orchards were all changed over to wineries.
Got it. Got it.
And the
Yep.
peach orchards that are still in production, most of their product is going to peach ciders.
Interesting to learn some of these things, but roughly how many scouts now participate in that activity every year? Do you
Well-
have an idea?
Well, like I say, aside from Alberta, I mean, I always thought every group did it because, like I say, from when I started in Beavers when I was 5 years old, Apple Day was an annual event, and every group I've ever been involved with, Apple Day is a staple. It happens every fall. We expect it. And I've lived in different parts of the country, and it's always been an annual activity. So I was kind of surprised when I learned that people in Alberta don't have Apple Day.
Nationally, I think we're probably pushing 60, 70%. Our senior groups, the venturers, don't participate. Some of the groups will make $4,000 to $10,000 a year. This is a weekend. This is starting Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and it's by donation only. We'll make $4,000 to $10,000 a year just doing this.
So who
So-
provides the apples?
It's up to each of the groups or each of the areas to go get their own apples from the orchards from around Canada. Here in Southern Ontario, we have so many orchards, and most of the times when we go to them and say, hey, we're Scouts Canada, they'll either give them to us free or at cost.
Yeah, and the groups that I've been involved with, typically when they take their places they've been able to secure to go canvas, they'll divvy up schedules and they'll try to assign different age youth to be together. So that you have the young one with the medium, with the older ones, sort of to do it together.
Each group keeps the money for themselves now, right?
Every single dollar from Apple Day goes right to the groups. There's not a penny that goes to national on this.
So what's the average price of these patches for a collector for his investment?
They sell for what, 49 cents, Joe?
Yeah, they're very inexpensive in the Scout Shop. I mean, they're not a very big, large badge, and like I say, they haven't really changed the design since they started making them. So they're very inexpensive to start collecting. And again, like the trees, the basic national badges, you know, if you were to collect them, most of them are not going to be too difficult to track down and start building a collection.
Now, where do they wear them?
They
Go
wouldn't
ahead.
go on the uniform. This would be something that they would add to their campfire blanket.
Our youngest groups, the Beavers, they'll put them on their vests as an activity, so that you'll see quite often on their little brown vests the number of Apple Days and Trees for Canadas that they've attended.